Hey friends, Kambria Evans here today to talk about why EMDR works for goal setting. That's right, it is almost the new year. 2024 is coming up, and a lot of us like to make New Year's resolutions. And did you know that there is a reason why most people who do EMDR don't have to make New Year's resolutions? Because we have actually folded that into our treatment planning. Every single EMDR target that somebody designs, processes, and completes includes an element of what is working for them and what needs to end, because both are important, right? If you think about making New Year's resolutions, you'll think, okay, I'm going to reflect on what's happened in the past. I'm going to reflect on what's happening now in the present, and I'm going to set an intention to make a bridge to the future. Here is what I want the future to be like, to look like, to feel like, that is different than how it is now or how it has been. And what's so beautiful about the way that EMDR sets this up every single target, every single time, is that it does provide that bridge for people who are desensitizing trauma, for people who are desensitizing disturbance. Because as we've talked about on this podcast, you can't just take away something that feels bad, right? It's important to think about what's going to be in that space now, right? If we have a couch, and I'm thinking about this because I just ordered a new couch. If we have a couch that is bottomed out, uncomfortable, maybe has some bad memories attached to it, right? Had it for a long time, doesn't really serve you anymore the way that it was supposed to or the way that it used to, it's time to change. We're going to want to make sure that we think about, talk about, plan for a new couch. We're not going to pull this couch out of my office in a couple of weeks and then just say to people coming in, well, we desensitized that couch. The couch is gone. It didn't work anymore. Sit on the floor. We're going to think about, what do you want the new couch to look like, feel like, be like in your future space, in your future life. And this is one of the coolest things about EMDR, because we really invite our clients to think about, when we desensitize that trauma from childhood, what do you want to think about yourself instead of, I am bad? What do you want to feel in your body instead of that tight chest when you think about your cousins? We give people a bridge. And the way that we do that is we talk in the beginning of EMDR about what needs to change. That is like the very first conversation I have with my clients. And it really is the reflection process that we go through as we come towards the end of a year, isn't it? Right? We look back on the year, we think about what worked, what didn't, what felt good, what felt bad, what was hard, what was exciting and good that we want to keep repeating. And we have these intentions for things to be different moving forward. So today I'm going to talk about how that process looks with an EMDR clinician who's skilled and experienced. So if you're a client in EMDR, if you're thinking about EMDR, this is kind of what it should be like for you. If you're someone who's curious about EMDR, I want to give you a sense of what it might be like for you if you were to try it. And if you're an EMDR clinician, I want you to think about the fact that you don't just desensitize trauma. You don't just desensitize disturbance. You are giving your clients a bridge to the future, their future selves, their future lives, their future relationships. What is it going to be like now that this is desensitized, neutral, gone, right? We're not just going to have them sitting on the floor. We have to have a plan. So when someone comes to work with me, I want to just talk about some of the things I get curious about, because I'm holding both what needs to be desensitized and neutralized and gone, and what's going to come in, right? Who do you want to be now? So when someone contacts me and we have that first initial session, we are in phase 1 of EMDR, which is history and assessment, okay? And in this phase, people have lots of different strategies. They'll have some people write down a timeline of all their traumas. They'll have people write a timeline of, positive events, negative events. They'll have people write down their triggers. The way I like to do it, I'll just say to people, why are you here? Meaning, what has brought you to me, right? What is the most active pain point that needs attention first? And oftentimes it's because they have a trigger happening now that is very often related to the past, right? So I don't ask my clients to write down every single traumatic experience, because what's so wrong about that is, first of all, even if they wrote down all the events, which by the way would light up their entire nervous system and activate them and make them feel terrible, right, and overwhelmed, I don't need to know the events. What I need to understand is what was learned or decided from the events, right? Because one person can have an assault and decide it was my fault, right? They're in that negative belief of responsibility that doesn't belong to them. And this is a very common negative belief that survivors of assault carry after they're assaulted. But someone could be assaulted in that same situation and come out of it with the belief of, I can't trust anyone, right? I take no responsibility. That's not on me, but now the world is unsafe. So people interpret the same event very differently. This is why you'll see siblings in the same house coming out with different beliefs of self in the world, coming out with different adaptations about how to cope in those situations, okay? So writing down all the events themselves is quite frankly silly. What we need to understand is what was learned or decided. And so I use what I call my belief inventory guide. If you are a client or a therapist, you can download this for free when you join the Zero Disturbance mailing list. It is in our client resource library. And what this is it's a way for me to understand with my clients, what positive beliefs of self do you currently have? What negative beliefs of self do you currently have? And how strong are those? Because guess what? Sometimes a part of us believes I am bad, and it's really strong. And another part of us believes I am good. So how can we have a part that believes I am bad and I am good living in the same person? Well, it's because we got different curriculums, right? We got a curriculum from the person who assaulted me that I'm bad, but then we got a curriculum from my teachers at school, I am good, right? So our job as an EMDR therapist is to help people become congruent in their beliefs of self and the world. It is our job to help people become desensitized around negative beliefs, okay? Beautiful. So I ask my clients more about their beliefs. I want to understand what was learned or decided, and that gives me a sense of what assets are we working with. If we have a positive belief of I am good, that is an asset we can use as a resource in our EMDR processing in phase 4. And if I know I have a part that believes I am bad as well, that helps me understand what was learned or decided from past curriculum, past trauma, past caregivers reflecting back mirrors that, weren't accurate. So phase 1 of EMDR illuminates all of these things, right? And again, I don't often need to understand every traumatic event that's happened to my clients. That's not what we actually process. People come to me for EMDR or brain spotting, and they'll say things like, I'm scared. I'm scared to go back and do EMDR because I don't want to be re-traumatized. And what I help them understand is you're being re-traumatized every day by your triggers already. I can appreciate that it's scary to go back, but we are not going back to look at the trauma. We are not going back to go stare at the trauma. We are going back on a rescue mission to help the part of you stuck in that situation now, still there, help that part have a response, a soothing, and a sense of safety that it didn't get to have then and is still confused about. Okay? I've said this before and I'll say it again. Your brain does not care what time it is. This idea that there is a past, present, and future is something that we as humans made up to understand time and life and ourselves. But our brains, right, our part of our brain understands the concept. When it comes to the wiring in your brain, and the way your neural networks map out safety and non-safety and connection and non-connection, there's no time. There's no distinction in your body of I'm not safe when I'm 5, but I know I'm safe when I'm 43. And so how do I make those things congruent? If I have an alarm system from, 1985, but I know I'm safe now, how do I make those things congruent in my body now? Because my nervous system doesn't care what year it is, that's made up, okay? So I get curious about people's beliefs of self in the world, and then I get curious about their alarm systems and their assets and resources, right? Tell me about your adaptations. What's an adaptation? It's just a part of you that has decided, I'm going to make sure I never get hurt again in that way. So I'm going to avoid all intimacy, all romantic connections. I'm never going to date again, right? Because I was traumatized by my college boyfriend, okay? That is a decision, an adaptation, a part that keeps me protected now and isn't ideal because, first of all, it was made with my brain at 21 that was not yet developed, right? Our brains keep developing till age 25, some of us till age 30, some of us later. And so noticing with our clients, here's what you've done so far to adapt to these situations, to adapt to holding incongruent curriculum, how you've adapted to holding incongruent beliefs of self and the world. And aren't you amazing that you have come up with all of that? Aren't you amazing that at the age of 5, you learned to dissociate from your body so that you wouldn't feel pain? That is an adaptation. And then what happens when people come into EMDR therapy is that the adaptations have become so overdeveloped, people don't feel like they have a choice anymore with them, right? They have this part of them working for them 24/7 to dissociate them when the alarm goes off, but they don't want to be dissociated all the time. They don't want to be dissociated half the time anymore. And it doesn't get to feel like it is a choice. It doesn't get to feel like their life or their body even belongs to them anymore. When a trigger comes in, whether it's positive or negative, we love our positive triggers, right? We love the triggers that link us to positive memories and positive body sensations, right? If I smell cookies, I know I'm going to have a cookie and it feels good and I have positive memories of baking, right? But let's say I smell gasoline. That's a negative trigger that might link to that explosion, that fire, and that smell, the burning. And I feel like I'm back there, right? So there's a lot there in terms of complexity about how our brains are wired and our nervous systems, and it's all magnificent. It's all so sophisticated, and it's all actually there working for us. And where we start to feel betrayed by ourselves is when we feel like we don't understand our bodies. We don't understand our linkages in our brain. And so my role as an EMDR clinician really is to assure people that your brain and your body belongs to you. Let's try to make sense of what's happening together. And if you are somebody who has a lot of somatic symptoms, like if your body likes to communicate, maybe it's through panic attacks, maybe it's through a tight chest or IBS in your stomach or migraines or TMJ in your jaw, right? Maybe your foot is moving all the time with a flight response stuck in the foot. Your body has so much information in it trying to communicate to us, and we just have to know how to listen and how to integrate that into our processing. So all of these things are coming up in phase 1 of EMDR and history and assessment for me and my clients. I am also understanding the adaptations I get to meet in the first couple of sessions, the parts of them that have kept them safe. And oftentimes, especially for very highly accomplished, high-achieving people, they can be things like, I have to be perfect, or am I doing this right? Or I don't know if I can feel too good or too bad. I have to kind of stay in this place where I'm safe. Like I'll notice from them from the beginning, the adaptations they've made to survive their trauma and their curriculum and where things are incongruent. And I want to know all those things, right? If you have an EMDR therapist when you're moving into phase 2 of EMDR resourcing who says, oh, we can't resource you. Something's wrong with you. We can't give you a calm place, because even though I learned about that in my basic training, It's supposed to be able to give you a calm place or a safe place. And let's say you have an adaptation that's like, I don't want to feel calm or safe because the minute I let my guard down, something bad's going to happen to me. Because that was real and that was true. Thank God they have that adaptation. And it's so silly and harmful, really, for EMDR clinicians to say, well, you can't resource yourself. No, they can't resource themselves in that way because you're bumping up against an adaptation that's there for a reason, that needs to be respected. And we need to be able to modify our clinical skills to say, okay, your body does not want to feel safe or calm, and it makes sense. And so let's find another positive linkage place we can identify, articulate, and expand for you in phase 2 of resourcing for EMDR. This is what a skilled EMDR clinician should be able to do. Unfortunately, most EMDR basic trainings do not give clinicians any kind of complexity around phase 2 resourcing. So I would encourage you to look for someone who's EMDR certified, or like myself, an EMDR consultant who understands the nuances of the protocol of EMDR and does not put blame on the patient or the client that they're not doing it right. Okay? So phase 1 and phase 2, we've understood the history, we understand the beliefs, we understand the adaptations. Phase 2, we're doing resourcing to help us outside of session and during processing of trauma. In phase 4, we're identifying positive linkages, right? Memories that are positive, safe people or figures we can install, a la Laurel Parnell's work. And we're not pushing on anybody resourcing strategies that don't work for them. Right? We're being flexible and creative. And then here comes the good part. Phase 3 of EMDR, people talk about phase 3 not enough because it's actually a pretty quick phase. There's so much there. Phase 3 of EMDR is when we decide what is our target. What does that mean? What are we going to process in phase 4? What are we going to desensitize? Okay? And so there's this saying in EMDR, start with the first memory from childhood or the worst memory. Now, most people I work with don't jump into the deep end of the pool without knowing how to swim with me. I give them typically like a target around, 5 on the disturbance scale of 0 to 10. So like, let's do something that's disturbing, but not like the scariest thing you can ever imagine or you've ever been through. Because they don't know how EMDR works yet. So I don't agree with first or worst. So we're thinking about phase 3. We're thinking about what target can we identify to start with so that you get to understand how EMDR works. You get to see how your brain processes and how your adaptations show up to try to help us, right? Because they're trying to be helpful, protective, loving. And then we get to see what it's like to process together. We get to learn each other, right? Are you somebody who feels like you need to keep your eyes open when we have the tappers on? Are you somebody who doesn't like eye movements because you got hit and I should not be putting my hand in front of your face, right? Are you somebody who needs to talk during processing because it grounds you and keeps you from dissociating? Are you somebody who needs to stand up and move around my room while you hold the tappers so that your body does not feel overwhelmed in a collapse response, sitting on my couch, feeling re-traumatized somatically like you were when you were a child and you couldn't physically get out of a situation? Okay, these are all the things we are actually learning about how to do this together effectively. And there's no better resource than a completed EMDR target. So why wouldn't you start with a 5 on the disturbance scale or a 6? The reason that people say, I can't do EMDR is because either the clinician doesn't start them fast enough and takes too much time in phase 2 to try to resource them and doesn't give them skill building, or they go straight to first and worst and it completely overwhelms them, rightfully so. And they're like, whoa, this is scary. I'm not doing this. Okay. So this is where a lot of EMDR needs to be more thoughtful on the clinician's side. So phase 3, we're thinking about the target. Now, I like to do a target that's in the middle. I like to prioritize people understanding the process and us learning each other so that when we go for the disturbance level of a 9 or a 10, it's not our first rodeo together, right? We have a confidence that is real, a lived experience. We just finished a target. They feel the transformation. They feel the neutrality. They believe in EMDR. They believe in me. I get them. It's beautiful. Okay. So the target setup is amazing for phase 3. We ask our clients a couple of questions, and this is where we are literally designing a bridge of where we want to go. How will we know we're done? What will it feel like, look like, be like? Okay. So what do we ask? Well, we ask them, what do you want to work on? Well, something that's kind of disturbing, but not all the way disturbing is probably when I got fired from that job a couple years ago because I was drinking. It's not a 10 on the disturbance scale, it's a 5. Now, as the clinician, I might understand that that person's brain might link to things that are more disturbing because they are related to this issue, but that's okay. That is okay. Okay. So we first ask, okay, what is the target image that best represents the disturbance of that for you now? And people will often be surprised. They'll say, wow, what would have been disturbing when that happened was this, but what's disturbing about it now is not actually getting fired or being in my boss's office, but sitting in my car afterwards and just feeling like a failure. And I was alone. I just sat in my car and cried and I just didn't know what to do. Okay, so that's the target image, you in your car. Beautiful. The next question we ask is, when you notice that target image with me now, what are the words that best go with that image? What's the negative cognition now, right? I'm a failure. I'm alone. Okay, which one of those feels like it has more charge now? It's I'm alone. And now here comes the coolest part, I think, about setting up a target. I ask my client, okay, when we're done with this target, when it's desensitized, neutralized, not disturbing in the same way, instead of I'm alone or I'm a failure, what do you want to believe about yourself instead when you think of this event? If you had a magic wand and you could believe anything about yourself, maybe you can't feel it now, right? You can't even imagine it now. But if you had a magic wand and you wanted a positive belief, what would it be? Maybe instead of I'm a failure, it's I can learn and be successful, or I did the best I could and I can learn from it. That's what I want to believe and feel. Not just believe cognitively, but I actually want to believe that in my body too, right? And then I ask them, how true does that feel? When you think about that target image of you in your car and you're alone, you feel like a failure, how true does that feel now, that positive belief? Usually it's pretty low, right? So what we've done is we've given someone a bridge towards a positive belief of self. It doesn't exist in the target image quite yet that it's strong enough. There's so much disturbance about the negative belief, about the event. We're not there yet, but we're just planting a seed of like, here's where we're going to go. And this is kind of like what people do with New Year's resolutions. Next year, I want to do this so I can feel this. Next year, I want to do this so I can be this or believe this about myself. Okay. When people say in January, I'm going to go to the gym every week and I'm going to, yes, those are for health reasons or maybe appearance reasons, but there's a positive belief in there, usually of like, I am good or I am beautiful or I am worth exercising, right? Or I want to live. So there's always this positive belief around any behavior, which is really cool to think about, actually. Helps simplify a lot of the complexity of our lives when we think about it that way. So then we go back to our target setup and we ask, okay, we have our map, we have our bridge of where we want to go. When you pull up that target image of you in the car, when you notice that belief, I'm a failure or I'm alone, whichever one feels strongest, noticing those two things together, what is the emotion and what is the body sensation when you notice those things with me now? The emotion is I feel panic. I feel the panic in my chest. My heart is racing, right? Okay. So what we've just done is we have articulated and defined the memory bundle that is most disturbing around this event. We have an image. We have a negative belief. We have an emotion and a body sensation. And these four things together create a neural pathway, kind of like a portal. We're going to go poo and shoot into the portal and see what else is linked there and delink and respond and notice and desensitize. And it's not just cognitive, it's in our body. We want to get subcortical, right? Which is why I love brain spotting so much. The target setup is very similar, and I'll do videos about this later. But really, we're trying to understand with brain spotting, like, how do we get out of our neocortex and notice what spot our eyes want to go in to process, right? Usually there's tons of blinking when we process with brain spotting. So that this is happening so fast in brain spotting, right? So fast because it's all subcortical. And time is different when we're in our body versus our cognitive neocortex. Okay. So then we ask, disturbance level of this bundle of these 4 elements, what's the disturbance level 0 to 10? It's actually like a 6. Okay, go with that. And then we start to process with the bilateral stimulation, right? People do eye movements, people do buzzers back and forth, people tap themselves. I think tapping yourself is very laborious. But if you don't have tappers or a light bar or a hand in front of you, you got to work with what you got. And what's really cool about when we process with EMDR is that at the end, our brain gets bored of it. Our brain's just like, yeah, it's the disturbance level is like a 2 or a 1. And it's just, you notice you're done because your brain gets bored of it. And or your brain starts going into positive resources, positive material. Your body starts to feel calmer, right? There's not that same trauma stickiness, that same disturbance stickiness there anymore. And so isn't it amazing to think about desensitizing, and also then we install the positive belief. So we check our work, right? We say, okay, this feels neutral. This does not feel disturbing anymore. When you notice that target image, whatever it looks like now, because usually the pictures change as we process, and you notice that positive belief, I can be successful, I can learn from it, I did the best I could. When you put those 2 things together, any body sensations from that? How true does it feel? We don't just ask these things cognitively, we actually check them in our body, and we use the tappers to link these things together tightly so that when our client goes out into the world, they walk around now with a new target image linked to a positive belief of self, and the disturbance is gone. How amazing is this? This is like a New Year's resolution with a insurance policy attached to it, right? Like, I don't have people come back in my office and say, you know that thing that we delinked and then relinked and then reprogrammed? Well, now it's back to the way it was. This has literally never happened before. I mean, I know as therapists, we can't give guarantees, but the linking of our brains is pretty powerful, this neuroplasticity. And so when we intentionally delink, desensitize, and then link intentionally to positive beliefs that feel true in our body, you're a whole new person. You're having a whole new emotional experience. You are living a fulfilled New Year's resolution. And it's not like you have to work at it. It's just the way it is, right? When we have neutrality with a completed EMDR target, neutrality means this is just the way it is now. Right? When I have women sitting in my office and they say things to me like, I don't abandon myself, they're not actively bringing that in as a belief mindset strategy. Their body now believes it's true. It's like they don't even have to waste energy convincing themselves because their body's just like, this is the way it is now. Yeah, it wasn't before, but this is the way it is now. And that neutrality of energy allows us to have more energy for other things. We are not managing a trigger all the time, right? We are not reactively noticing a negative belief of self or a disturbing body sensation and like trying to manage it and calm it down and No, it's just not that way anymore. And a positive belief of self is there now. How cool is this? I think this is way cooler than making New Year's resolutions. For me to be able to see this in my office every day and to live it as an EMDR client myself is one of the most magical, coolest things I've ever experienced in my life. And it's why I do what I do and why I will always be a client of EMDR and brain spotting, because I know it is the fastest, most efficient way to ensure that I'm learning all the time. and learning not just with my mind, but with my body, all the positive beliefs of self in the world. Okay? So if you're somebody who loves New Year's resolutions, and you're somebody who loves learning, and you're somebody who is curious about yourself, and maybe you're somebody who's like just tired of managing triggers, tired of having to pull in your tools to like respond and manage and da-da-da-da, I would hope that listening to this episode today gives you some excitement and hope about what next year might feel like for you if you were in EMDR therapy, if you were in brain spotting therapy, if you were in art therapy, right? Accelerated resolution therapy. These are all therapies that are brain-based modalities. They all use this very similar neuroscience strategies that are very different than talk therapy. They're very, very different, okay? So if you're already in EMDR therapy or brain spotting therapy, you're the coolest. I'm very happy for you. I know sometimes it can be scary and painful, but you're going to be so glad you did this. You're going to be so glad because your life's never going to be the same again. It's going to be great, right? It's going to be so much better. And you're going to see that so clearly when you've completed these targets you're working on. And again, if you're someone who hasn't tried this yet, maybe you do the gym membership in January for 4 weeks. Or maybe you find an EMDR therapist or a brain spotting practitioner who can really help you change just not your physical body or just the way you talk to yourself, but change your nervous system so that you actually feel better in your life, right? Because it's the one life we get, and I want you to enjoy it. You deserve that. So with all that being said, y'all, I love thinking about these things with you. If you haven't signed up for the Zero Disturbance mailing list, I would highly encourage you to do that. We have tons of free resources in the client resource library, and we keep adding to it all the time. So if you haven't checked that out, please do. A lot of the tools I reference in these episodes are all in there. They're the tools I use with my actual clients here in my practice in California, and I want to make them available to as many people as possible for free. So with all that being said, please take good care of yourselves. The holidays can be hard for lots of reasons, and I will look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.